Hey everybody, Chad Schimmel back here at the shop, and I wanted to show you the two main tools I use for pen turning. Now, I'll say I use these 98% of the time because occasionally I will use a small gouge or something else, mostly for detail or decorative work. But as far as my bulk pen turning, I use two things. I use this, actually it was a homemade carbide tool holder, and I use this the most, and then I use this small Skew. And it's funny because I've had this small Skew for probably 8 or 10 years, and it was a good inch longer when I got it, but I've sharpened it down over the years to where it is pretty short. It was small to begin with, but I like to be right on my stuff when I'm turning detail work, especially small acrylics, and this Skew is what I use for that. The biggest thing with these tools is sharpening them. So I use a couple of ways to sharpen these, and I'll show you what I use here. This is a little Tormek 3 T3. I've had this thing for years. When I bought this, there weren't the cheaper alternatives there are now, like Grizzly, and I think even Jet has one. If I was going to get one now, I'd probably go that direction because these are a little pricey. However, this thing has been great, and I've used it a ton, so I've gotten my money's worth. Couple of main things here. This is a whetstone, slow speed, so I usually keep a cup of water next to it so I can add water. You don't want it to run out of water or it'll just not sharpen as well. But this is a sharpening stone only, so if you need to change the angle or regrind something, it'll take you 100 years on here because this thing is so slow. But what Tormek did well is they set up all the jigs to where it's repeatable. So I have this little jig set up here. This is a SVS 50 jig, and I have it set up at the angle. This is a 10-degree angle for this Skew. It's a real shallow Skew to where I can just slide it on just that easy, put it on the rack here, and sharpen it. It only takes a few minutes, actually not even a few minutes. You just go back side to side. The nice thing is with this jig is you can flip it over and sharpen, flip it over. And then what I would usually do is, I didn't oil this up for the demonstration here, but I would have this oiled and even some paste on it. This is the leather, and I would work it down with that. And that is really all it takes. A few seconds on each side, as long as you keep up with it. If I hadn't sharpened it for a long time, then it would take a little more. But when I'm turning acrylics on a real regular basis, I'll sharpen this probably every 2 blanks. So I try to keep it sharp as quick as I can, and this is a great way to do it. So this is a Tormek 3, a T3 by Tormek, and it works really well. Now, the other one, my carbide tip tool, is a little different. Now this one, I buy the tips usually in a 20 pack. I don't know if you can see this here, but it's a whole rack of them. So what I'll do is go through and use each one, all 4 sides, use them up, use them up, use them up, and then I'll have a whole rack of essentially dull or dirty ones. And I do a couple of things for this. So the first thing is I'll take a little cup and I'll put some of this blade cleaner in the cup, and I'll dump all these in there and I'll swirl it around and let it sit. After a little while I'll wipe them off, and then I can sharpen them. And that's what I'm going to show you here. So cleaning is an important part of it because a lot of times with these tips I'll turn wood and other things that have something sticky in it. So even acrylics can have a little bit of a sticky element to it, the sap in the wood, and it just builds up on these. So a lot of times that's as big a culprit as being sharpened, is just a buildup of junk. So I'll soak these really well, I'll wipe them clean, and then I'll take this. Now I learned this from another video quite a while ago, and if I can find it I'll put a link, but basically it might have even been, I forget what brand this stone is, but it might have even been the company that makes this little stone. It's It's essentially a metal sharpening stone, 300 and 600 grit. And it's a super simple process of using the stone. I start with the 300 side. I've got my carbide tip tool, and I want to make sure that's really clean. And you just take this, this is the lapping fluid, and it's made by Trend. They make actually some pretty good stuff. You put a couple drops, wet the stone down, and it's as simple as putting your tool on there and moving it around. And you can see, probably not in the video, but when you're doing this, you can see in the fluid that it's getting a little dark, and that's the metal, and if there was any more debris from not cleaning, maybe you can see it there, but it's getting dirty, and to me that means I'm getting somewhere with this, because at least it's working. And then just by looking at this, I can already see a big difference in sharpness as far as the metal. So what I like to do, wipe this off, flip it over to the 600 side, a couple drops, same tool, just on the 600, and sharpen a little more. I would say I probably sharpen each side about 20 seconds. If there's some reason to go longer, of course you can, but I would say that's probably about the average, is 20 seconds. And just going and going and going here. And then we are all done. This essentially is ready to go. I'll do a quick wipe down, get all the fluid off of it, put it back in the container, and I'll have a whole new rack of these ready to go. And if you do them all at once, it's really fast and easy. If you did them one at a time, it takes just as long to get everything out and get it ready for one as it does 20. So that is how I sharpen my two main tools when I'm turning pens, or really anything on the lathe. I use the carbide tip tool 90% of the time. And it's only if I'm really concerned that something is fragile that I run to the Skew. But it's important to know how to use both, and even your gouges when turning. So be sure to do that. The biggest mistake that new people make, and maybe even old people, not old turners, is not sharpening your tools enough. If you're thinking maybe it's time to sharpen, you're way past it. So sharpen, sharpen, sharpen. If you're not sure, sharpen it again, because sharp tools will give you so much better work. Your quality of work will be so much better. So get out there, sharpen those tools, and get them spinning. Thanks for watching. Please give it a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button.